Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Fight for Energy Justice. My name is Dr. Adrienne Hollis, and I am the moderator for today's fantastic session. I have a phenomenal group of panelists I'll be introducing shortly. First, a few words. The U.S. energy sector is facing, and has faced for decades, a critical challenge of energy access and affordability, particularly for disenfranchised communities. This is even more urgent as we face the climate crisis, right? The climate emergency. Much like climate change and environmental pollution, racism, economic apartheid, and other challenges, equity and justice is at the forefront of energy related issues. And people of color, communities of color, and low income communities carry the burdens of inadequate energy systems. And everybody will be giving their perspective. For me, energy justice includes the availability of sufficient high quality energy resources and the affordability, including the poor and for the poor and disenfranchised. Um, a transparent and open process of energy utilization and energy availability, and also sustainability, as opposed to popping in and popping out or answering an emergency. Having sustainable access to energy is very important. So today, our panelists will talk about the need to prioritize environmental and energy principles to ensure that frontline and fence line communities are the primary beneficiaries of technological advancements in the clean energy sector. And they'll delve deeper into how this might be achieved. So without, and that's my dog, I apologize. Without further ado, let me introduce them, and they'll talk a little bit about themselves in a minute. So our first guest panelist is Constance Thompson, the Senior Vice President of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Justice at ACORE, which is the American Council on Renewable Energy. Next, we have Nicole Sitaraman, who's the Acting Director of the Office of Public Participation at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, also known as FERC. Mr. John Red Cloud, who's the Managing Director of the Red Cloud Renewable Energy Center. Yinka Bodie George, who's the founder and Chief Executive Officer of the Sustain Our Future Foundation. And Dr. Shelley Francis, who's the co-founder and managing partner at EV Noor. EV Noor. I don't know why I said that. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and we'll start with Constance to tell us a little bit about her work and her personal, travels to where she is now.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. I'm proud to be a part of this esteemed panel and looking forward to the engaged discussion. We've got some top leaders here. It's going to be a good discussion. Constance Thompson, I have the pleasure of serving as a Senior Vice President for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Justice with the American Council on Renewable Energy. ACORE is an organization that's an advocacy education organization that brings together policy, advocacy, and technology. What we're known for is being the place that anybody who touches a renewable energy transaction is a member of ACORE. Our work includes moving policies forward, and the IRA is a big piece for us. We were part of that big movement there. We're 20 years old. We started kind of small and been around for a while, but what we're really known for, as I said, to be an action-oriented at the center of movement for finance and in renewable energy. I've been in the space of equity and inclusion for almost 19 years. I started off as a headhunter. I was a really great headhunter. I got to Corning Incorporated and their headquarters in Corning, New York, and they said to me, "We want you to help out with the diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives." No clue. Since then, I've been on this path, breaking down barriers to employment, to engagement in industries where we are underrepresented and underserved. And most importantly, I like to pride myself on being able to make connections to make things happen for those in underserved communities. That's been my history and my work. My work specifically at ACORE focuses on working with entrepreneurs, women and minority-owned businesses and enterprises. We bring in 10 a year. We bring them part of our power infrastructure. It started 3 years ago, and now 85% of our member companies said if it wasn't for us and their membership at Acorn engagement with Accelerate, their companies wouldn't be where they are now. www.acor.org/accelerate. The success stories tell themselves. Our members are amazing movers and shakers that are a critical part of this transition across the U.S. And you can also find out more about the program there. In addition, we've expanded our work to breaking down barriers and providing access and advocating for breaking down those barriers and justice in partnership with many of our high-end companies. And we're moving into supply chain. What we've realized dealing with our companies is that there are clear, intentional systemic barriers to companies of color entering into the supply chains of leading companies in the U.S. that are leading the transition. So we're moving into that work, working with our members to say, okay, what can we do? What are the best practices, and what are we going to advocate for on an industry level to be able to make that change in this movement? I thank you for being here today and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much, Constance. I'm looking forward to hearing more about your work and the impact that you have. Let's hear from Nicole Sitaraman from FERC.
Thank you, Adrienne, and just great gratitude for inviting me to be a part of this important discussion. I've been attending this conference for many years, and I consider it a high honor to be a part of this conversation. So as Adrienne mentioned, I am the acting director of the Office of Public Participation at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. I must give a disclaimer that my comments today are my own and don't necessarily reflect the views of the commission or any one particular commissioner. So with that said, I'm happy to kind of launch into a discussion about what I'm working on at the Office of Public Participation and what the office is here to do for the public. To level set, what is FERC? FERC is a quasi-judicial independent regulatory body that is charged with regulating interstate transmission of electricity, of natural gas, of oil. FERC also reviews proposals for interstate natural gas pipelines, as well as LNG facilities for the building of those facilities, and also is involved in reviewing proposals for the licensing and relicensing of hydropower projects. So with that knowledge about what FERC is here to do, its responsibility to the public interest, the Office of Public Participation has a statutory mandate under the Federal Power Act to provide assistance to the public with respect to all authorities exercised by the Commission. We're here to provide assistance for people seeking to intervene in proceedings, to make their voices heard, to comment in proceedings. And our mandate statutorily guides our mission, which is to empower, promote, and support public voices at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And so what that looks like, practically speaking, day to day, it looks like constituent services. We have a hotline, we have an email address that the public can reach out to ask us questions about how to comment, how to find a docket, how to find information about a specific topic within FERC's purview, how to e-subscribe to dockets. We really provide that kind of nuts and bolts, responsive information for people looking to learn more about FERC, as well as weigh in on the proceedings that are of great importance to communities across the country. Also, we are very committed to outreach. So outreach is a core function of the office. We're here to facilitate enhanced relationships on behalf of the Commission with communities that have been underserved or have not been had the resources to really meaningfully engage at the Commission up to this point. And we've been very proactive about that, very focused on building trust, being present, showing up for communities, and providing them through expanded kind of hyper-local work, information about specific priority proceedings for them to comment on, show up for, and make their voices heard about. So an example of that this week, several members of my team are in Lawrence, Massachusetts, providing information to communities in a predominantly Spanish-speaking community there that will have the opportunity to weigh in on potential relicensing of a hydropower project located there. We also provide education and technical assistance. We're very conscious and focused on the fact that information is power, and meaningful public participation can't really happen without resources and staffing behind educating the public about what can be very complicated, technical, but very relevant topics to people's lives. So we provide educational materials, workshops. Just recently on July 13th, we had a session on pre-filing processes in natural gas matters. And I'm asking you to save the date for October 25th. We will be releasing a video on the fundamentals of intervening in proceedings at FERC. And we have an ever-growing library of explainer documents on topics ranging from regional transmission organizations and how to engage as a stakeholder, to explainers about liquefied natural gas, to explainers about pending notice of proposed rulemakings at the commission. So we're bringing FERC to the people and the people to FERC. My background is, it's been almost 20 years that I've been an attorney working in consumer advocacy, the solar and battery storage industry, as well as the clean energy finance space. And I'm really proud to be a part of this kind of inaugural team at FERC focused on procedural justice at the commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nicole. And now let's hear from someone I'm excited to introduce those of you who haven't met him yet to. He serves on our inaugural Environmental Justice Advisory Council at the National Wildlife Federation, Mr. John Redcloud.
Great. Good morning. Thank you, Adrian, for the invitation. I'm glad to be here. I want to share a brief greeting in the Lakota language. I'm a member of the Oglala Lakota people here in Pine Ridge, South Dakota. I come to you from the reservation here. You know, we like to say, Chante washtea iuha na pe chiuzapelo. Basically means, you know, greet you with a hearty handshake and a good heart. You know, greeting you today with good intentions. I'm glad to be amongst this panel here of luminaries. Wonderful, excited, and grateful to share the work of Red Cloud Renewable. We are a nonprofit grassroots education on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. Generally speaking, you know, first of a kind and one of a kind are accolades, great things. And for us, we are a first of a kind, fully functional renewable energy training center on the Indian Reservation, and remain one of a kind. However, we don't want that to be the case in the years to come. We would like other tribal nations to understand better solar energy, for example, and work to empower their own tribal communities towards walk the path towards energy sovereignty. So for us, you know, we have a training center here and we focus on workforce development. So we provide free hands-on training to tribal members and those in marginalized communities for them to become solar installers. My dad likes to call them solar warriors. That's what we are doing. You know, we're harnessing the power of the sun. You know, in our tradition here, there's a great, always been a reverence for the sun. You know, the sun dance. There's been a worship of the sun, understanding that there is life-giving power that's around the sun. So our work today, it's a wonderful blend of tradition and science, you know, and it's a new way to honor the old ways. So for Red Cloud Renewable here on the Indian Reservation, our goal is to help, grow that workforce so that tomorrow, you know, we'll have solar warriors deploying energy for a more equitable future. And we've been kind of left out of the equation many times. You know, here on the tribal reservation, there are about 30,000 or so tribal members where I'm from, but there are over 2 million indigenous people in this country today. So we're not just some page in the history book. You know, we're right here. We've been all this we've been here this entire time. And part of what Red Cloud Renewable does is we go and do our best, knowing that there are 574 federally recognized tribes out there, and we are but one. But we still have our language, our culture, our ceremony, our ritual. There's pageantry and beauty there. And for us, the median household income here on the Pine Ridge is not that great. Maybe $10,000-$15,000. So there's a lot of harsh economic realities. And here on the reservation, energy is very hard to access. And for us, we know, and it's always been, solar, for example, on a home has been an affluent household acquisition. So we're trying to change that narrative here, and we're trying to use some of these funds that have leveraged from the federal government, solar for all, truly for all. So we're grateful to have the sort of organization profile that we have, and it harkens back to our ancestors, and that's what guides us, is our spiritual path and our understanding that the world wasn't made for humans to dominate it. We're just kind of part of the equation. We're there with others, and we have to use our space and our intellect responsibly. And we have to also recognize that we're not just speaking for today, but we're speaking for 7 generations ahead. We're going back to our ancestors and remembering those lessons, trying not to forget some of those things that were imparted on us and that should be ingrained and running through our DNA. So I'm just grateful to be here today, and hopefully I can answer some questions or shed a little bit of perspective about some of the Native American way that we view things, and how we're able to today bring our voice to the table. And anyway, I'm grateful to be here. Thank you for hearing my introduction, and thank you, Adrian. Happy to be part of the group today. Looking forward to the discussion.
I am too. And thank you so much, John. Next, let's hear from the founder and chief executive officer of the Sustain Our Future Foundation. Yinka, please.
Hello, everyone. It's really exciting to be here, especially since I'm Maryland born and bred. I'm always super enthusiastic about participating in this conference. My name is Yinka Bode George, and yes, I am the founder and CEO of Sustain Our Future Foundation. I'm an environmental public health scientist by training. So again, super enthusiastic about participating in this specific conference and then in this panel with my esteemed panelists. So I've been saying and making a joke for a while that we're experiencing this sustainability renaissance. And so if you're a Beyonce fan, you're really primed for the time right now. I think, back for a lot of folks who have been working on environmental justice challenges. So I've really cultivated this career in environmental justice and health, policy advocacy, community organizing. It's really wonderful to see how commonplace these conversations have become. Dr. Hollis, you may remember back in the day participating in the environmental justice legislative team that I facilitated in Maryland, doing things like trying to get the Maryland Public Service Commission to incorporate health impact assessments. And that was like the most innovative idea back in the day. And now it's so commonplace. That's such a heartwarming experience for me personally. And so, yes, I'm really glad to talk about these issues today. So my work is really situated in corporate sustainability. A lot of corporations have very ambitious sustainability goals. Especially tech companies, as you can imagine, trying to run their massive operations through sustainability practices. So because of this, I was one of the participants in piloting the first environmental justice power purchase agreement. If you are familiar with corporate clean energy procurement, a conventional agreement between a corporate clean energy off-taker and energy developer is called a power purchase agreement. So Microsoft came up with a very innovative approach to those power purchase agreements, where essentially they add an added rate on top of that agreement that's dedicated to community impact strategy. So they selected 2 different energy developers to really pilot this idea. And I worked with one of them to figure out how to spend those critical dollars. So I did that work and realized that a bigger, badder premise essentially existed. So I created Sustain Our Future Foundation, which is a national nonprofit organization, to really scale that premise of redistributing critical dollars to community members on the front lines of the climate crisis, using that same financial rider on sustainable development contractual agreements. And so our mission is to transform sustainable development to maximize positive community impact and achieve environmental justice. And we do this through offering consulting services and facilitating social impact programs. So again, we work with corporate, but also municipal sustainability teams to really introduce them to these opportunities, and then help them steward those critical dollars through environmental justice strategies. And the last thing I will say is, on the corporate front, it's so important to recognize that, again, these tech companies, they're the main drivers of clean energy development right now, right? They are procuring massive volumes of renewables. And so it's important to think about how that clean energy is coming to be. And our work is really in helping folks really consider the social benefits that are available as you develop these projects. So I'm excited to talk more about that and learn from my panelists as well.
Thank you so much, Yinka. Gosh, we have the most fantastic panel. I've already said that, I know. I'm going to keep saying it. Our next speaker is Dr. Shelley from EV Noir.
Well, good morning, everybody. Just a bit about myself, and then I'll tell you more about the company and the work that we lead in this space. So I'm a former medical school professor that was specializing in environmental public health disparities. And I've also been driving an electric vehicle for the last 6 years. I'm also was the first African-American woman member of the Electric Vehicle Association. So that just kind of level sets my background and passion for the space. Then just to talk a little bit more about who we are and the work that we do. So EV Noir is an award-winning consultancy working on electric connected, shared, and autonomous mobility technology. So essentially what we're doing is working to advance electrification best practices and electrification diversity, equity, and inclusion. I co-lead a team of engineers, data scientists, researchers, EV charging experts, and e-mobility professionals who are working across the multimodal sector of transportation. Specifically, our work, we utilize a human-centric, data-driven approach and frameworks to integrate and amplify solutions to address multimodal e-mobility or electrification. Our firm works with partners ranging from auto manufacturers to utilities and co-ops to government agencies like the White House or the EPA and the Joint Office, to charging network companies, nonprofit, community-based organizations, and rideshare delivery network companies. So just to give you some context on why we created this company is that working in the e-mobility sector, we saw a gap in the marketplace. And we knew we had the expertise and the knowledge to address this gap in utilizing a data-driven approach, as well as a holistic and public health framework to be able to amplify and facilitate this thought leadership. Members of our organization or leadership team are also the co-founders of a national 501c3 nonprofit that's the nation's largest network of diverse EV drivers and enthusiasts. So we have members across the globe, not just within the United States. And this organization's mission is to really increase awareness of multimodal zero emissions transportation while also accelerating a just transition to adoption. We work with EPA, Department of Transportation, Department of Energy, and the White House on their Clean Transportation, Climate, and Justice 40 initiatives. We're also the creators of the National E-Mobility, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Conference, which is an annual conference that focuses on amplifying best practices in the electrification sector. So essentially connecting the dots, so to speak, between multimodal electrification best practices and electrification, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So whether we are discussing electrification of micromobility, electrifying rideshare delivery network companies, or working alongside community experts to understand their mobility needs, or even exploring autonomous vehicles as a viable transportation and mobility source to address gaps in transportation. Our work aligns with the thought leadership in the space and is working to really address gaps that we see in the electrification space. And then just finally, this is a new sector for many communities. So it is really important to us that we create opportunities. So that means workforce and economic development opportunities for individuals from communities who may not have often had a seat at the table and are underrepresented in the clean energy and clean transportation sector. So because of the amplification of electrification across the transportation sector, there'll be 2+ million jobs, depending on which report that you're reading. And so it's really important to us to make sure that these positions are represented by people like those of us on this panel today. And so we created a one-of-a-kind e-mobility fellowship program that targets historically Black colleges and universities, Hispanic serving institutions, tribal and indigenous institutions, as well as trade and technical schools. So our goal is to make this technology and resources available to all communities. So I'm really excited and glad to be here with these colleagues today. Looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shelley, and as am I. So let's jump right in. I appreciate the fact that everybody is so diverse. You know, we're going to be covering so much ground. So to start off, and this may be, this is going to be a question that we're going to get a variety of answers for, but I'd like to know, and I think the audience would, what would an energy just future look like in the US, in your opinion, and actually from your perspective, your point of view? And we could just start with the first person who wants to share the information with us.
I can start. First of all, I'm so thrilled to be in this conversation with you all. Actually, EV Noir has been kind of an inspiration for me and my family getting an EV. So that being said, in terms of energy justice, for me and certainly for OPP's work, it really does center on participation. So not only participation in the benefits of our evolving or an expanding energy delivery system, but participation in the planning of it. It's really going to be essential that moving forward, that democratically managed energy policy, energy infrastructure be a priority. Procedure is going to be really critical to making sure that energy justice becomes a reality. And when I'm talking about procedural justice and public participation, certainly a focus on fair access to proceedings, equitable kind of distribution of opportunities to participate, but also there needs to be a concerted effort by our regulators to facilitating greater trust amongst communities so that they know that when they come to a proceeding and submit their comments, submit their testimony, that their views are being heard and read, that there's trust that the institution takes their perspective seriously and on the same playing field, level playing field as large industry. So the trust part of energy justice and procedural justice is going to have to be a true priority, and the way that we make fair and equitable energy access a reality.
Thank you. Yes,
Oh,
please.
yep, I can follow up on that just because I think of procedural justice as really the cornerstone of energy justice, and um, to me as well, it really, I think you have to break down what environmental justice is. So let me give my quick explainer of what environmental justice means to me, and then how I think about energy justice. So, to me, to really understand environmental justice, you have to understand environmental health. So, environmental health factors include things like where you eat, sleep, play, pray, how you access those things, right? And we know that our communities, due to systems of inequity, have not been developed equitably, right? So, there are communities that experience environmental health factors in healthy fashions and unhealthy fashions. And we know that the majority of folks who experience unhealthy environmental health factors are Black and Brown and lower income community members. And so, what environmental justice says and does is, regardless of your social identity, regardless of where you live, the color of your skin, your income level, everyone deserves healthy environmental health factors, right? So that's the justice work. Again, me being situated in the corporate sustainability space, energy, the progress and development of energy has really been through the means of like creating sacrifice zones, right? We develop these energy projects and do them in a way where there are so many communities that are just being sacrificed. I think when I think about energy justice, it's saying, well, we have to do away with business as usual, right? We have to think about business not as usual and turn these same sacrifice zones into what I say is our liberation zones. And we can do that through reparative justice work, right? Centering those same communities we have sacrificed in this new clean energy economy. And so that to me includes procedural justice, right? It's making sure that there is a democratized process for developing energy projects. But we're also thinking about how these energy projects are clean, are safe, are regenerative, to help make sure this energy transition is equitable. And then, of course, because I'm always thinking about what the end goal and our end vision for this work is, I think energy justice is a facet of a regenerative economy. And just to break that down a little bit, a regenerative economy, which is a shift from our current extractive economy. A regenerative economy centers ecological restoration, community protection, equitable partnerships, and again, that fair participatory processes. And I think that's really what our end goal is, and energy justice helps us realize that end goal.
Thank you so much, Inka. John, I see you came off mute, and Dr. Shelley also. And okay, everybody.
John, do you want to go first, or do you want me to go?
Yeah, just really briefly. I come from a place on the reservation where some still don't have electricity. That's a real thing. It's not uncommon at all. So part of our effort here on the reservation is to help leverage some of the funds and resources that are out there, so that some of these grandpas and grandmas out there don't have to literally be in the dark in the evening time. Enjoying some of the things many of us take for granted. We walk into a room, we press the switch, and voila, there's light, right? So that's not the case for some people here. So what we're trying to do is amplify their voices in this place using our platform responsibly as a nonprofit. Grassroots, we're perpetually a native-led organization, and we're perpetually going to be on the reservoirs, in the trenches here on the reservation, alongside of all of our tribal members here. And we believe that's the best use of our platform here, because we've been getting some federal grant dollars coming in. We're accessing some funds, but we also understand that there are many who depend on us. So for us, the energy justice part is making sure that we don't forget the story of where we come from. we always have to remember that for us. And that's going to be kind of our guiding principle today. So our goal here, and hopefully by being a part of these sort of panels and these discussions, it's going to remind folks, people are in different parts of the country. We're in South Dakota. I think we are outnumbered here by livestock. There's a cattlemen's association, and there's all these other big agricultural interests here. But there are plenty of Americans, human beings that live here in this state, and we're kind of passed over often because there's not so many of us. We have one telephone area code for the entire state. That's something that's really hard to wrap a head around sometimes when people drive across town and they're a whole new area code. It's our entire state. So that's something new. Anyhow, that's kind of where my vision comes from, and kind of what guides me today is kind of helping those who may not even have electricity at all today. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, John. Dr. Shelley or Constance?
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to just, if I could take the liberty of having our audience and do just a really quick exercise that helps me explain what energy justice is to me. So if folks would for a minute just close your eyes and then picture yourself outside as a child playing. So doing the things that kids like to do, particularly you specifically, things that you like to do as a kid, whether it might be riding your bike, jumping rope, but really just having fun and having a good time as a child. So now you can open your eyes. So the world that you grew up in isn't the same world that we're experiencing today. And so if you look at recent data that was released earlier this year from the American Lung Association, that data tells us that 1 in 3 Americans are living in communities with unhealthy levels of air pollution. And people of color are more than 4 times more likely than white people to live in a county with 3 failing pollution grades. And so we're obviously grappling with some really difficult challenges, but my view on this is that together we are changing these things. So together we can all make a difference. And that's why one of the reasons that we're really passionate about doing the work that we're doing. So transitioning, tying that into what energy justice specifically is to me, I see energy justice as it seeks to ensure that everyone, regardless of their socioeconomic status, their location, race, ethnicity, they have access to equitable, clean, affordable, and reliable energy, similar to what John was saying, while also minimizing the environmental health impacts and addressing historical inequalities and inequities, and fostering an inclusive decision-making process in the energy sector. So that's what energy justice means to me.
Thank you so much. All of these resonate with me so deeply. Constance.
It's so lovely to hear that we align on this. I often participate in conversations where there's a true diversion and disagreement. The whole panel could be about the disagreements on what energy justice is, right? Which is always interesting to me in the line of work that we do, right? But in my opinion, and my belief, and those leaders that I tend to admire in this space, energy justice is the original human right. It is a civil right. And at the time that we stand in now in this nation, for people of color and underserved communities, it's an opportunity for restorative justice, particularly restorative economic justice. We at ACORE view this, the IRA, Justice 40, the provisions in the IRA to impact communities, impact the disproportionate impacts that are happening in underserved communities, which are primarily Black and Brown and poor communities, for us to build wealth, to help build wealth creation through women, minority business enterprises, which is why we decided as an organization that is primarily our members are the financial leaders, the movers and shakers of development deals, of the financial deals. We control that. Our members do. 90% of our members are at the center of this work, which is pretty powerful. And it's powerful to say we have a program focused on helping to grow, develop, break down systemic barriers, break down financial barriers, but most importantly, to engage these leaders who are making transformational impacts in underserved communities transformational impacts and technology developments in this nation. So for us at ACORE Accelerate is centered on breaking down those systemic barriers for success and wealth generation that an environmentally just system and country has.
Thank you. And one thing I noticed that one theme is really working with communities, like in partnership with them, or community-led, community-driven. And I certainly appreciate that. That's something I'm like Constance, and normally not in spaces like this where, you know, there's so much accord. You know, usually it's a bit more. Sometimes the differences are nuanced, but sometimes they're glaringly obvious. So I appreciate that. So I'm curious, and I wish I had said more time to talk about your organizations, because each and every one of you we could have one panel, one presentation, just let you talk for an hour and 15 minutes. So I apologize you didn't get much time. So try to put it in with any answer I give. But I'm curious about, if I came up to you, if anybody came to you and said, what's the one thing that you're most proud of that you've done in your work? What would you say? And that's for everybody. So we're going to leave it open. I'm not going to call names. Just going to leave it open. Jump in where you fit in.
So I'm happy to go first. It's two things that I already talked about, but one third thing that I didn't. So two things that I'm really proud about, but overall I would say is just to be a minority-led, created business working in the space and surviving and thriving and creating pathways for others, people of color, women, and, you know, broader populations to have a lane in this conversation and provide thought leadership, but also do it from a very different approach, from a public health lens and approach, similar to what my colleague Yinka shared a little while ago. So that's one piece. And I think I have four. So our National E-Mobility, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Conference, which I talked about, because that's a very unique conference. And one of the things that I love about the conference, not that I'm biased, is that the diversity of the panelists and the subject matter experts flips whatever you see in other conferences, maybe with the exception of this conference. I would say about 90% of our speakers are people of color, people who are here and now impacted by these issues that we speak of. So that's the second thing. The third thing is our e-mobility fellowship program that targets young people from diverse communities who may not have a space or have even heard about career paths and opportunities in the clean multimodal transportation sector. And then the last piece is that we created a Women in E-Mobility series. So that is a series that we, launch at different times of the year, but essentially we're providing a space for subject matter experts. Usually they're diverse women in terms of racial ethnicity, because we want young people to see themselves in the space and see themselves in the leadership role. But we also have allies that participate in that as well. So those would be the four things that, I am most grateful for and proud of organizationally.
For us at ACORE, the first thing I'm proud of, and I, just have to be very honest, my board knows this, my CEO knows this, everybody knows this. So it's not an outing of sorts, but we were one of the few trade organizations that didn't sign on to a bunch of commitments in the beginning. We were squarely focused because our board said, you're making change. Whatever we come up with, we're making change, we're sharing power, we're sustaining this, and we're not jumping on bandwagons. Incredibly proud that we were public with that, and we received criticism from that. I also think that's the reason that this program's been sustained. The second piece is that we are making strategic transformational impacts towards an equitable and just transition in an economic standpoint. Clearly, our members are in communities, they're in places, they're being supported by financial impact individuals. They're creating solutions that has taken other groups years, and they've had lots of money to do. And at ACORE Accelerate, we're making those changes. We're making them so much so that we're an award-winning program. The third piece, it comes from the second, is that we are sustaining our work. We are in an age of equity inclusion, diversity fatigue, even justice fatigue to some extent. This work is hard. And this work right now that we're in, given the political environment we're in, given the environment we're in as a nation, is even more critical and could go away in 3-4 months, in my opinion, based upon what's happening on the national level. Last but not least, very proud of our engagement on the IRA and our push to make sure that the IRA, even in its second, third version, included critical provisions that help grow minority and women-owned businesses, that point to wealth creation, that point to tax equity being in a very unique way in communities. And then the third piece of the IRA that I'm very proud of that we were engaged in and pushed for from a policy perspective was the fact that we're still at it. We know that there's more work to be done. And ACORE, because of our reputation, because of our size and agility, and because of our members, are here. And we're not going anywhere, and we're standing strong on these policy changes that need to happen. So those are the things that I'm really proud of that ACORE has been engaged in.
Thank you so much. Thank you both so much. Nicole, I see you've come off mute.
Thanks. I have several things that I'm proud of with respect to FERC's work on public participation and frankly, OPP's just growing village of constituents who are coming back to us for help and assistance. That's how I know we're succeeding. We're developing strong, lasting relationships with community organizations across the country, including environmental justice groups, including tribal communities, tribal leadership, who are beginning to trust that we will deliver what we're promising as an office. And that is something that I'm hugely proud of. The other thing is that, I believe that in my role as part of this inaugural team building this office, it's only 2 years old, although it was established by a statute in 1978, the year of my birth. But it was only staffed and resourced in 2021. I'm very proud to have built, in collaboration with so many amazing people, a team of leaders. The staff at the Office of Public Participation, they are themselves thought leaders in their respective field. So we have people who have 20 years experience on the gas infrastructure side, multiple years of experience on the energy market side, great deal of experience in litigation and in data analysis and administration. So we're building a team of leaders. I consider myself a leader of leaders, and I'm immensely proud of the collaborative work that we're doing internally at FERC and externally. The relationships that we've been able to build within the four walls of the commission have been very strong, and I'm very thankful and appreciative of the support that we have been receiving from leaders within the commission and leaders externally as well. And most importantly, I'm really proud to be moving forward procedural justice. So people around the world are actually reaching out to us about our best practices. My understanding is that FERC OPP is the first office of its kind, and there is a movement afoot amongst regulators across the country, state, local, and some folks internationally who are interested in staffing, providing a budget, providing staff, providing resources around public participation, because they know the importance of having a fulsome record in their dockets regarding these topics that are so critical to our energy future. So very proud.
Thank you so much. Come on, don't be shy.
So I can talk about what I'm proud of. So for me, the goal of sustainability is environmental justice, right? If we win on sustainability, we will achieve environmental justice. So Sustain Our Future works through the lens of reparative justice, because building a more sustainable future is the biggest opportunity to address environmental injustices, right? There's unprecedented amounts of funding being directed into sustainable development right now. And I am working to redirect a significant percentage of that funding into frontline communities. And I'm really proud of that work. And that funding is going to be used to do things like invest in entrepreneurs underrepresented in the industry, workforce development programs, retrofit strategies for low and moderate income community members, and other infrastructure projects for the same community members. And also piloting projects that reflect what a regenerative economy is, right? So community owned, decentralized, nature-based solutions. It's just really exciting to be a participant in this movement. And again, I'm hoping that eventually environmental justice becomes not a talking point or something housed under a marketing team, but really ubiquitous across corporate sustainability practitioners. I'm really hoping that we shift the way the industry thinks about their work, and I'm just really proud to be a participant in that.
Adrienne, I wanted to just mention quickly, John, please forgive me, is that one of the things I'm proud of, it has nothing to do with ACORE really, is that this national effort of leaders, you've got some of the most powerful people in this space who've been doing this for years now in this moment, visible for their work, recognized, appointed to positions nationally that they're accountable for, and they're delivering, they're over-delivering. I look at people like Dr. Shalonda Baker. What? Tony Reams. What? The whole DOE Office of Economic Shalea, Kareem. I'm like, what? They are being empowered to do their job. They have resources. And when they come at you, they expect results. You have a White House counsel? What? I'm just proud that finally we are here in this renaissance, to use for one of my panelists, of transformation. And there are people who we know to get stuff done that are doing it. That is something I'm incredibly proud of us as a nation to see. I'm not saying everybody supported, but I'm saying a lot of these leaders who are accountable at the national level for delivering these funds and making sure they're equitable, making sure we're measuring it, we have tools to do it. They're doing their job and they're overachieving. So I am, as a nation, as someone looking at our national leaders, when I think about you at FERC, Nicole, what? I mean, it's unheard of if you understand corporate infrastructures, if you understand how corporations work and they influence these things, if you understand how the government really works, you look at this and you're like, whoa, I better do something because this is not going to happen again. So I'm proud of our national leadership on these.
And I think we all agree because you hit that one on the head for real. If we're talking about the steps we've made and, compared to the last administration, we've leaps and bounds to protect those who've been traditionally overlooked, ignored, and unheard. So I totally agree with you. I'm signing on to that. So thank you for that. John, we have not forgotten about you. So
I met a woman, young Native American woman, last year from a reservation in Arizona. And she was living in Aurora, Colorado, and she's working in solar. And I really listened to her story. I wasn't just hearing her, I really listened to her path, what it was that she had to go through, some of the obstacles and challenges that she encountered coming from the reservation. So today, she's a strong, independent woman raising her 2 boys. They have college funds that she started, and she's proud of the work that she does. And I asked her, why are there's not very many Native women like you, and she was a little puzzled by that as well. So there was an opportunity through the DOE. It was called Advancing Equity Through Workforce Partnerships. And I used the platform at Red Cloud Renewable to write a proposal that specifically trains Native American women to become solar installers through the Solar Energy Technologies Office. And I call it the BRIDGE program, Bridging Renewable Industry Divides and Gender Equality. And it's designed for Native women who are mothers. That should be something that we celebrate. We should champion that. It shouldn't be a stumbling block or something that stands in the way. So we use our program and taxpayer dollars to provide wraparound services, childcare, mentorship, travel stipends. And what we're trying to do is increase the foothold that Native American women have in the renewable industry sector. So that's what I'm most proud of, is using our platform responsibly and helping to create a program. In reality, it's been selected and funded for the next 3 years to help somebody amplify their voice. So that's what I'm most proud of, doing my work today. And this just happened back in June as we were notified. So really happy.
Congratulations.
you.
That's fantastic. So, I'm all about people get the money going to where it needs to be. So, and at this, before we get into our questions from the audience, I'm going to put a plug in for the energy justice portion of our technical assistance center grant that we've recently received for $12 million from EPA and DOE in partnership with Dr. Wilson at the University of Maryland, because we do have one component of that focus specifically on energy justice, and of course environmental justice and so much others information that the community has identified. Different community organizations that are our hub partners have identified as necessary. And so, that's something that I'm proud of. It's the fact that people put their trust in you. And I think Nicole said it, it's about trust. And normally, I think it's easier, and I wish we could talk about this, when people look like you. Because some people, that's just the truth of it, and part of that is history, is historic practices of racism and extraction and all of that. So I'm proud to sit here with all of you and see all of these faces of these phenomenal people, phenomenal leaders. And I was going to ask, and Dr. Shelley kind of started talking about your projects that focus on youth, but we don't have time. Now we have to go to our questions from the audience. So maybe we'll have time. If not, I'm going to ask Dr. Wilson for another session. I'm just kidding. But, I will encourage everybody to please go to websites. And if you all have a moment, please put your website in the chat if you can. I know they can Google it, but it's easier when you have it. So, and with that, I'm going to turn to one of our 5 questions. We have a comment first. You are all so impressive, and thank you so much for the work that you're doing. And I underscore that too. So just so you know, we start off on a good note. And Yinka, comment from Bernice. Sacrifice zones to liberation zones. Okay, let's see if we can get a question. Let's see. There is one. In Virginia, the energy consumption of data centers is impacting the energy burden of low-income households. Any comment on that?
I have lots of comments on that. I'll try to keep it succinct and cute. So there's a whole universe of work that has to do with making data centers more sustainable. But what I want to focus on is how community members who reside in proximity to both data centers, but also to these massive like clean energy, the solar farms, what have you, can be activated in shaping how those projects take form in their community. So if you're not familiar, there's a concept called community benefits agreements. If you don't take anything else from this session away, please take this away. You as a community member have agency in shaping how projects take form in your community. And a community benefits agreement is a great way to be empowered and take agency. There are so many benefits that you can work in partnership with clean energy developers on for your community. This fund that I manage, Sustain Our Future, we maintain a fund and we have an entire program strategy that centers around social impact strategies for community members. That's one benefit that you can demand as a community member, right? So you can work with Sustain Our Future and say, well, if there's a project in my community, how can I take maybe some revenues from that project and direct it into benefits for my community? We can help you do that. But there's other things that you can demand as a community leader, right? You can demand so many social benefits that are specific to where you live, the circumstances of your communities, including reducing energy burdens, right? So please do your research, get in touch with me and my team. We can help you navigate that. And I see a follow-up, community benefits agreements. Great tools to be activated in shaping sustainability infrastructure projects.
Anybody else would like to chime in? You know, this question did, Yinka, that someone reached out to me who's a resident in Virginia and was talking about data centers and the fact that people really don't understand the amount of pollution or the impact that these centers have on communities generally. So I'm appreciative of the work that you're doing in this space, the work that's being done and how this is being addressed. So thank you for that. Well, while we're waiting on, and I put my message in the wrong, I think we put our messages in the private chat, everybody. So we may need to move it over to comments, I think, because only we can see it. So I did the same thing. While we're waiting on additional questions, I would like to take this opportunity to, some people did, some people put it in the right place, to ask about projects you're working on that are focused on youth. Who wants to, Dr. Shelley talked a little bit about it. And John, I know you are working on a project that involves youth, and I feel like, you know, everybody's kind of focusing on that because as we always say, and I know young people hate to say it, they're our future and, you know, they can retire me. That is fine. I don't see it happening, just by the way, in the future, you know, in the near future, I wish, but I'm open to that. So John, and then, you know, anybody, just jump in and share with us.
For the young people, you mean, is that what was your question again?
Any projects that focus on youth?
Yeah, so we've had a collaborative effort with just right down the road here is where I went to school. You know, it's called Red Cloud Indian School. It's just a small school, about 200 people in high school. It's a K through 12, and we have a collaborative effort with them, you know, trying to bring them down there, kind of like the middle school, and just introduce them to solar energy, just simple things, you know, solar tabletop solar panels with little light bulbs, and have them wired up. And then there's no batteries, there's no switch, and it's really, you know, the light goes on in their mind. And we're trying to show them what this solar power can do for them, and I guess just getting them away from the computer. Sometimes getting away from their phones and just giving them this basic little tabletop tool here and letting them know that this is something that we're doing just right down the road for me. So I think those are our smallest efforts, is getting to those younger folks right now. But we're always looking to expand to do that on our reservation. About 50% of the population here is less than the age of 18. So the average lifespan just really isn't that great here. It's like 45, maybe 50 years old. So I'm also born in 1978 there, Nicole.
Okay, so we're not going to do that.
There, yeah, let's not do that.
We're not going to go there.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, because I'm not telling. So why are we doing that?
Something I'm really proud of that we have at ACORE is that we worked with Orsted to develop an Orsted internship program. And during this program, we focus on bringing in students that are from HBCUs, HSIs, or underserved communities into our organization. So each one of our departments is afforded an opportunity to have an intern. The part that makes me really excited is that they get to do a research project that may contribute to our body of work. And they present on a critical issue they think we should be focused on. They think that would help move our mission forward. And it's interesting because most of them every year have been focused on some aspect of just transition, some aspect of challenging the things that we put out there via their research. So I'm really proud of that program. I'm proud of the Orsted leadership that is sustaining that program. But most importantly, those students, they're out in the world now saying, hey, I worked for ACORE and I got to do this. And people are like, you got to do what for who? So really proud of that program that we have. And it's an internal effort. I find a lot of times we do external work around just transition and we brag about that. But when you look at our infrastructures internally, sometimes we're not doing that work. So I'm proud that we're doing the internal and external work on that. And those students are just so successful.
Thank you so much. Nicole.
Can I underscore that point that Constance made about internal work and amazing interns? OPP had a phenomenal summer intern from Johns Hopkins this summer. a young sister from New York. She was phenomenal, and she really expanded our horizons around social media, around how to kind of maximize our reach, and really kind of help some of us. I'm still stuck in the 90s, and I'm proud of it. Some of us who are not too super comfortable with all the graphics and all the fancy things that you can do to spread information. She was wonderful. And, FERC does a really great job with this internship program. And I know for a fact that all leaders within FERC, and especially Chairman Phillips, very focused on diversifying our future energy workforce. That's a huge priority. So internships are a great kind of vehicle to bring in new voices and fresh perspectives.
Thank you. Dr. Shelley.
Yeah, and I talked about the program that targets the college students, and so I do want to just take a step back because we have to have programming for the younger folks too. So we facilitate a K through 12 STEAM and STEM program, so that gives young people the exposure to, robotics, AI, career paths in clean transportation, or understanding what the technology is, as well as seeing people who are reflective of their communities, who have careers and have created companies or entrepreneurship in the clean transportation space. I think it's really important for them to see all of that, and for us to really start doing that education earlier and earlier to create that pipeline and just generate that overall interest and enthusiasm for career paths in that sector.
Thank you. Now, I have two. Oh, I'm sorry. Anybody else?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that, I'm amazed at young people and how quickly they catch on to this. It took me a while to catch on, really. So when I think about you, Dr. Shelley, doing work in EVs, and you, John, doing work with students from the reservations and so forth, they get it. And they get it at a level I'm ashamed sometimes to say, I didn't even think of that, And so I am proud of this generation. They're a little angry at us. I mean, that's okay, but they get it. They get it in ways that I'm like, wow, this is so easy. I feel it just, I'm in awe, and I'm in awe of people that do work with students in this area. So thank you, Dr. Shelley. Thank you, John. Thank you, Nicole. There is, Anika, just amazing, just amazing. Yeah.
I thank you for that, Constance. I often say in the EJ space, there's sometimes a dichotomy between the older, more experienced people and the younger people. But if they work together, how awesome would that be? You have new ideas, and you also have identified stumbling blocks in the past, or things that were done. And together, oh my God, they could accomplish so much. We could accomplish so much. And I think once people realize that and stop doing us versus them, and you didn't do anything, or you too young, or whatever the going narrative is, then it's going to be even more awesome. So we have 13, I think, 7 minutes, 8 minutes. I have two questions. You can choose which one you want to answer, but they're both so important. So if you make it short, you can get to both of them. One, I'm going to ask, what was the number one barrier that you faced or may still be facing in your work? But then second, what's the message? What's the one thing you want to tell people who are listening, people in the audience? So pick one, or promise me you're going to give me time so that you can answer both. I'm greedy, okay? What can I say? Who wants to go first?
I can start. I think when I consider barriers, I started Sustain Our Future earlier this year. There's just obvious barriers in starting up a company. And I think for the sector that I am in specifically, there's lack of diversity challenges, obviously, but then there's also a conventional way of doing things that I'm coming up against, right? So I think there's a degree of difficulty that you experience when you're a Black woman pioneer, and I'm still sort of navigating that. But it's wonderful to be among people who get me and get the work that I do, and I'm finding supporters each and every day. So that's just an amazing thing. I want to answer your second question too. What's the thing that I want people to take away from this? I think just the idea that a better world is possible, right? It is possible. We can do this. We can address the climate crisis in a manner that also heals this legacy of environmental harm, right? And environmental injustice. We can do this. We just have to do it together, and we have to do it in a manner that centers the community members who are most vulnerable to the climate crisis, because they actually have all of the most effective solutions. So that's what I want everyone to take away. Like, a better world is possible. We can get there. We just have to, it's basically just right outside of conventional practices. And so let's lean into that.
Thank you, Inka. Absolutely. Anybody else? Barriers, message?
Well, I'll jump in here. I have to say I have some little personal bone to pick with a saying that has been going around for a minute. And the saying that everyone, always talks about when we're talking about public participation, they say that, if you're not at the table, then you're on the menu. Okay, I'm going to propose that we have a reframing of that, because if you're a community member that never received an invitation to the table, never got the postcard in the mail that tells you where the table is, what time the table dinner is starting, what's going to be served at the table, how are you supposed to think you're going to have a seat at that table? So I think that, and I am speaking to all of us, and there are many regulators who get this point. There needs to be work done around changing that paradigm a little bit and putting forth resources to finding, locating, and building relationship with the people who need to be at any given table. And of course, there's always the question of whose table is it? And are you willing to go to their table? Are there multiple options for tables here? So it's something that I'm thinking about a lot. I want to change the phrase to perhaps, come to my block, or let's have a community table or something like that. That's a message that I'm very passionate about, expanding the table and making sure that we communicate more with all communities about what's being served at the table.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, I would add to Nicole's comment that from the corporate perspective, Yinka, I'm totally expecting you to have a comment here, that many times when corporations or developers come into communities to develop, it's assumed they know that you're there. It's assumed they know who to contact. It's assumed they assume that you know the policies and the things that happen to bring them into the communities. So each one of us, particularly at this point in time, have a responsibility to be aware and active of policy in our communities, to be engaged, to demand to be engaged in people who are developing in your communities without your voices that are going to have tremendous impact. So my message is no policy, local, state policy that is impacting, making these health impacts that are helping to create wealth in your communities. And don't assume that these companies, corporations, foundations, groups know that you know. It's a need to be proactive, and we don't have a lot of time. This new potential administration change is critical. So it's important you know policy in your community. And I think the major barrier that sometimes we focus, the major barrier to achieving EJ is the fact that sometimes we focus so much on they should versus act and educate, or educate and act. Don't assume ignorance as an evil on behalf of the people you need to work with. Assume you need to educate, collaborate to a certain extent, but also know your stuff in this area. And I think that's a barrier. A lot of people say, "Ooh, it's race, it's ethnicity, it's gender." Yeah, those are serious barriers. But a lot of times it's just ignorance and just people choosing to be adversarial versus engage. And we don't have time for infighting if we're going to make this happen.
I just want to chime in. I definitely agree on the education and awareness and outreach, particularly for our work on the nonprofit side when we're doing advocacy or education and outreach, and just having normal conversations about what the technology is in our case. So we find that whether you have, graduated from high school or have a GED, or whether you have multiple degrees, there's still an unknown factor in terms of just understanding the clean transportation landscape, addressing myths about charging infrastructure, micromobility, sustainable aviation, and really providing more opportunities to meet people where they are with information that is easily digestible, that is culturally relevant and appropriate, will really make a huge impact in trying to accelerate some of these conversations and addressing some of the gaps and barriers that we see.
Anybody else? John, who else hasn't gone? Oh, that would be you.
Yeah, I would just say that years ago, this is something my dad used to say. Whenever the reservation system was imposed on us, they'd always say, "Go in that line over there. Stand over there for this. Stand over there for that." And he would say, "Look, we're tired of standing in line. We don't want to stand in line anymore. We just want to go be at a table, and maybe not at somebody else's table. We need our own table." That's what my dad would say. But stand out of line and do something for ourselves. Stop telling us to stand in line. And that's what part of Red Cloud Renewable does, is we're just trying to get out of line here, and that's also kind of an ambiguous statement.
Yeah. Look, we're ending. They're cutting us off. So I just wanted to thank you all so much. This was fantastic. This conversation, so much left to say. So thank you so much for agreeing to participate, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.